All right, my name's Matt with Clear Lake Fire Department, and I'm trying to demonstrate an issue that we had in training a couple weeks ago that was really interesting. It took a little bit of head scratching, and when we found out what the culprit probably was, it kind of occurred to me that this is something that could happen very easily in real life. So right now, my pump is not engaged, and right now, my water level is completely bone dry and empty. So what I want you to imagine is my pump is engaged and my firefighter is flowing onboard water. We have 1,000 gallons on board. We get on scene to a structure fire. Somebody pulls a discharge and this firefighter starts flowing water out with our 1,000 gallons on board. Okay? So that means his tank to pump would be open, allowing the onboard water to come into the pump and then out of a discharge. While my firefighter is fighting a fire and using the onboard water, we have our second group of firefighters show up and they set up a drop tank. And while they're setting that up, they hook up his hard suction on the rear inlet. While that's happening, he runs out of water, goes completely bone dry. The operations team calls out and says, "Hey, I'm out of water." And he can hear the tone of the engine change. He knows he's out of water. And that's can be a real big panic mode, okay? So he knows that he has the hard suction hooked up and he knows that he has water in that drop tank. So he's going to go over and open up the rear inlet. So now we have the rear inlet is open and he's ready to start priming. So on this engine, we have a rear prime, and he starts pulling on this. And I'm going to have my son Gabe step in, and he's going to pull on this. And we're looking at the hard suction here. I just want you to notice that nothing's happening. Okay, no water's coming up. All right, again, my engine is not running right now. For two reasons. One, it's bone dry. And two, I want to drive home a point. Okay? In this training scenario, the pump was running. And he was in RPM mode. So fortunately, the pump didn't take off on him because he was in RPM mode. It held and maintained a steady RPM. But you can really get flustered trying to figure out what is the problem here. It's important to understand that these pumps, if they're operating properly, we should be able to pull a draft from a static body of water with no water on board and without flowing any water. We should actually be able to do it without the pump engaged. So if we're having an issue, we have to understand and think, okay, if I can't draft, if I can't pull water up into my pump, what's the problem? The problem is that we currently have an open system, meaning that there's air being allowed into the system somehow. So since he was fighting a fire with his onboard water, 1,000 gallons, he initially opened up tank to pump, let that water by gravity fall into the pump, and he pushed it out. Now he's bone dry. This is still open. So I have an open valve in here that's shooting right up into an empty tank, which is going to the atmosphere. So I can't create a negative pressure. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to start pulling on the rear prime. I'm going to have Gabe step in again. Okay, keep going. And hopefully you can see in the camera, my water is coming up. He's drafting water up into the rear. Now I'm going to keep going until I hear that. When I hear that pitch change, that means I brought the water up to the rear inlet. Okay? Now I just need to hit my main primer just a little bit. You can hear that tone change, hopefully. I just brought this rear prime, brought it all the way up to here. And this one just finished it and brought that water right into the pump. And I want it to be kind of clear here. My pump's not even engaged. The propellers aren't even spinning. I'm able to draft all the way from the rear, bring it into the pump without having to have my pump engaged. So with all that being said, guys, all what I'm trying to point out is, one, these engines are supposed to be able to draft from a static body of water with even without the pump engaged. And it should be able to draft with no water on board. The most important thing is we have to have a completely closed system so that when I pull on the primer and I'm trying to evacuate the air out of the system, the atmosphere is actually pushing the water up through the hard suction hose into the pump. If I have anything open that's going to the atmosphere, it won't work. So hopefully that helps.